Last night I had the strangest dream in this bleak century. I dreamed that people the world around believed in chivalry. I dreamed I saw a kingly crown enshrined in laurel leaves, with grace and hope and purity attendant at his feet.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Chivalry Podcast, episode number 4, where today we will be having a conversation about generosity with Mistress Catherine von Heilige, a well-known and well-respected friend of mine from the Kingdom of Callantyre. So she's joining us now, and I'd like to say welcome, Mistress.
Welcome. It's still always fun to get to talk with my friends all over the place. Probably the best part of the SCA, I think, is those relationships.
Oh, absolutely. And our relationship is definitely one of those where it's doesn't matter how much time has passed, you just pick up where you leave off. So
Absolutely. Which is good considering the current circumstances.
Yeah, no kidding, right? But anyway, so let's start off a little bit with some of your background. Tell us where you're coming from, how long you've been doing this, what is there to know about you?
Loaded question. Well, I've come and gone from both the area and the SCA. I was introduced as a teenager. You know, we all find it at the Run Fair or at a demo or the likes. And my friend was his dad was an armorer, and we were hanging out. And then I got to know his dad, and Sir Glendor was like, "Oh, you should try this fighting thing." I was like, okay, so let's do it. So I started fighting at 16, and then I went away to college and just dropped it cold turkey. I didn't play SCA again until I came back to Kansas about 10 years ago. And then, so I think I really have only been participating in the SCA for like 9-10 years.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Similar timelines, although I was introduced probably high school times. I didn't play with the local group or anything, but my my hometown had a Renaissance fair in which the local barony participated and familiar with it. And even further back, actually, I remember the grandparents of one of the kids in my Cub Scout pack were heavy players and still play today in Southwest Louisiana. And
that's fantastic.
Yeah, I was always hoping that I might be able to meet up with them at Gulf Wars or something, you know, because they do attend, and it's like that would be cool if I ever got to see them again. But well, anyway, cool. I'm glad that you've joined us today. Let's talk a little bit about, or let's get a sense of some of where you're coming from. What are or who are some early influences in your particular journey from the beginning of your SCA career till now? Like, are there some folks or are there some formative experiences you can speak on?
I'm kind of a weird one with that. I've never had pure fear, or I'm not much scared of anybody, which is not always the best thing on or off the battlefield. So since fighting got me in, though, Glendor and Haladar and Duke William Batavia actually did my first authorizations when I was just 16. So I met some really of the key players in the Midwest and Callantyre when I was very young, and they were just the guys. So I never came into this with sort of the sparkle in my eyes and the magic fairy dust on everything. It was just the people I had been introduced to early on were the nitty gritty and the movers and shakers. So I kind of have maybe a behind the scenes. So if you have a theater background, you know, you're working behind the stage and you go to see a show and you're like, oh man, that lighting's a little off, or that when their sound, you have a hard time enjoying the show, but you still love the theater. And I have that association with the SCA, is I love the SCA and I love the magic of it, but I definitely come from the inner workings. So, Semyaka is definitely one of my best friends now, and I'm always going up and down to Omaha where they are.
Yeah.
I'm down in the city, so, and our current still king, Lucian. So those are my two that I always have philosophy talks with, and anymore I'm really into the philosophy of things rather than trying to win the cookie or get the, I don't know, it's more the why. I think I'm in for the why now. So those people draw me, and I run into everybody is important. Everybody's interaction that I have had has formed me and formed my opinion, or made me think about, am I doing this right, or the right reasons, or can I be better, and can I try harder?
Very well said. I think that the why is very important, and it's some of the impetus for this particular series of podcasts. I think that, and I think that having that sort of open mindset of taking whoever comes and showing them hospitality and hearing what they have to say it's a good mindset to be in, and it's a good practice to keep by anybody playing the SCA. I think you can really expand yourself if you're open to new ideas and new experiences brought on by anybody. So, so as I spoke earlier, our main topic for today is generosity, and I chose generosity to speak on with you for a couple of reasons. And this is going to involve a little bit of storytelling on my behalf, but we met 5-6 years ago now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When I made what I like to call the crusade out to Lily's War a few summers back, and I come from what I consider to be a very hospitable place, but experiencing Callantyre hospitality and generosity on such a large scale, first experience in that kingdom, was tremendously impactful on me, and it taught me a lot about what we should be doing as a society all over the place, and how to make people feel welcome, and how that bears great fruit when you do those things. And you were a part of that initial introduction to that new place, and that new sort of way of thinking for me. And you're not the only one, of course, but we had a good time. I think we clicked on a level, and that's why we've remained such close friends over the years, is because a lot of common interests, a lot of common goals. And I guess what I would like to start with in terms of this conversation is in your own words, why is generosity so important in what we do when we play the SCA?
Well, I'm glad that you had such a good experience in Callantyre and continue to do so as you visit. I think we're unique in that we play as a kingdom, and that lends a lot to it. So kind of the small town, everybody's held accountable, where nobody's so much better. And if a friend needs help, you help them. And we don't have a lot of the inner kingdom or the like inner household things that I've noticed as I travel globally. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in Drachenwald over the last few years, and even those guys, they know that they have to bind together because they're so spread out.
Right.
But definitely here in the Midwest, we're a little bit more spread out as well. So we tend to play together. If a barony hosts, it's not the baron and baroness aren't necessarily star of the show. The king and queen are still very often in attendance and leading. And I think by having such an intimate relationship with our crown and and our peers, that it's a little bit, it's kind of like having older siblings, they're constantly reminding you to be generous and to be hospitable and to not chase the virtues, but if you're in the game and you want to be a peer, these are the ways that you have to do it. And you're constantly led by example. We don't have a lot of finding it out for yourself, I don't think, which is good and bad, So generosity of time is already sort of it's that's what the first step is. We see people being generous with their time and their efforts, and then it just spills down to everything else.
Right. Okay. It's interesting that you bring up that point of generosity of time. I think that there's different levels. Generosity of material versus generosity of maybe spirit or attitude are important things, along with generosity of time. I think that being able to give of yourself when you can is kind of just the baseline, and kind of go from there. And again, I don't think that the people where I'm from in the Outlands were any less kind and welcoming than anybody else that I've ever met in the SCA. I just felt like coming from another place that wasn't Callantyre into kind of the heart of it, the premier event that they have annually, and and nobody was too good to deal with me. I tried not to be a nuisance, and my companions and I tried to not be a problem. But the truth is that when you don't know a place or you don't know, what's going on, it helps to have friends, and everybody was that friend there. Everybody we talked to was happy to explain what was going on or give us directions or walk us there if we needed that, all those kinds of things. So, and I'm starting to see more and more as time goes on that that sort of openness to helping others and being generous is starting to take more of a hold the more that I travel. I think that has a lot to do with the types of folks that are moving across the country to play the SCA. I don't know if you guys have experienced it there as much as we have recently, but my barony has taken in like 15 new people in the last year and a half from different kingdoms. And there's this kind of interesting intermix of people. We've had some from as far away as the Mid-Realm, some as close as Adenvelt, and it's interesting to see everybody try to take what they've experienced before, reconcile it with what situation they're in now. And I think it all goes a little better when we've got the mindset of let's just be helpful, let's just be friendly, let's make sure that everybody's got what they need. And that Lily's War and all the successive events and calendars that I've been to, I've made a point to find those lessons kind of hidden in the experience, if you know what I mean.
Well, again, I'm glad you always have such a good experience. I know you've brought people with you too to be like, look, this is how you do it. Do you know how cool these people are? Like, bring this. So thank you for doing your part in spreading it back to the other way. You don't have to move somewhere to have gone. And that's one of the reasons that traveling is so important as you become more involved with the SCA. And, peerage is a very good goal and everything else, but there's a weight to it. It's not just the gold star, the cookie. There's a job, there's parts of it that really should mean something to you before you just accept the accolade. In my case, you can't just rest on your laurels. So, you got to put the effort into maintaining that. And generosity, like you said, just being your friend and making sure that someone feels welcome clearly goes farther than you ever would think. It's 5 minutes to walk across site, or hey, drink your water. Callantyre is always famous for the water bearers, and God love them, because I'd be dead 10 times over if not. But yeah, the just little stuff like that that we almost take for granted. You know, we have to remember that we do this because it's a good thing to do. And, you know, in our case, it's the right thing to do, to try and take care of the community and the society.
Yeah, and I think that I think I've been blessed to be as well traveled as I am.
Yeah.
You, as you mentioned before, very well traveled, and I think that folks like us who do go to other kingdoms realize very quickly that uh, it's super reassuring that no matter where we go in the SCA, there's going to be somebody who can give us a hand if we're in a hard spot.
Yeah.
And we've had some weather turns crazy or mechanical issues with vehicles. I mean, we've all experienced it or been involved with somebody else who's experienced it. So being able to keep that generous attitude at the forefront of what we're doing, I think is super important. Not only for everybody in general, but certainly if you're going to take on the accolade and be a peer. I think a lot of what we do really gets drowned out by prowess.
Mm-hmm.
Prowess is important, and you should have a measure of it in order to be in one order or the other. However, the other virtues have their place, and generosity is one of the biggest ones, I think, when you're talking about a social club.
Oh, yeah. A lot of that goes back to time, kind of like I brought up and you've mentioned. It's your time within the club, the social club, you know, what you're going to do for other people. But, you know, you do stuff for other people because it makes you feel good. So, you know, it's okay to do something because you like to feel good yourself. And you just have to remember to stop before you're, I have to do that. No, you don't have to. It's appreciated. Certain meetings and requirements might be, or certain things might be required as a peer, but like, it's a fine line between like have to and should, or, you know, following through on your word, or you just got to be careful about the situation you put yourself into with generosity. So you can definitely overdo it. And in the SCA, where the virtues, and, you know, prowess and, but if you're top marks, then you don't only have to show up to every tournament. You don't only have to run every event. You have to also host the party, or, you know, take people into your home for crash space, or, you know, also work on largesse, or just a multitude of things. And you don't have to do everything. You have to know your boundaries and be willing to also share the load. You know, everybody likes to feel good about doing good, but you can't just keep it all.
You're not wrong. And honestly, this really dovetails nicely with the last episode that we had, which discussed humility. And we defined in that episode that humility is really at its base. It's about understanding your limitations. And I think that marries nicely with generosity, because the thing is if you think that generous means being the whipping boy or somebody that gets taken advantage of, you've got it all wrong. It's about being able to give of yourself when you can, and understanding that sometimes you might have to ask. You know, yeah. It's a give and take situation, I think, as you've described. And sometimes you just can't. And if you're being honest and you're being sincere and you're not just doing it to be obstinate, I think that people will understand.
Yeah.
And I think that the other side of that is that if you are asking for someone's generosity and they can't give it, you have to respect it if they politely say no. Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and you can't hold people accountable for cashing your check, so to speak. Like, well, I did this for the kingdom, and they're like, cool, this isn't us. Like, you did that, and it's not a barter system. Generosity isn't I give and I am guaranteed return. It's sort of the karma, you know, the yin and yang of everything. And if I give, it should come back, because when pressure is alleviated, something's going to fill the vacuum. You know, there you will get things back. It just may not be in what you expected or in that same time frame. So, you know, I really think people have to walk a fine line also with being burnt out, as we often hear people give, or have a certain thing that they do. And then, you know, we do want our dues, but I don't know, maybe we need to find out how to be healthy and talk about what dues are when they're returned. Right, generosity, you know, it's the whole you earn a peerage kind of thing, but it's not, I don't know, it's not the cookie, it's not the carrot.
I think it's important to recognize that at the base of what we're doing, there should be common interest and fun and safety. Those are the three things that I think ultimately have to be considered whenever we do anything in the SCA. Is we certainly don't want to get hurt. We want to have a good time, and we want to do something that brings us together. You know, I think artisans get a bad rap sometimes in our kingdom. I don't know if it's the case in Calendar, but I think some artisans probably across the SCA get a bad rap of being kind of isolated. Maybe they are into something that's very specific, and maybe they're the only ones locally that are trying to research it or to recreate it. And the truth is that we all want to be a little medieval. So if we can find maybe a baseline to come together and be able to share safely and enjoy each other's company and have fun, I think all the other stuff falls into place. I think it's also important that, again, with having some humility and understanding that generosity according to your own means is kind of how we define generosity in a larger scale for the society. It's written in a lot of the documents, corpora and standards for awards and recognition. Nobody should be expecting anybody to give more of themselves than is reasonable. And what's funny about that is that you get to decide what's reasonable.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to know yourself and be willing to stand up. You may be so good at defending other people, but you got to remember to stand up for yourself in that regard. Like, no, I've had enough. I don't have, what is it, spoons? Everybody's got spoons these days. I think, I don't know, it's a popular thing. It's one of the psychological things, like you only have so many spoons, or you know, you only have so many spell slots, or you only have so many, I have this many things I can do in a day, and I'm out.
Right.
But like you said, you have to be respectful when someone says no.
Yeah. And I think that those who maybe struggle with knowing how to be generous, and we kind of spoke about this in several of the other episodes, is you know, there's a self-reflection piece when we're talking about the philosophical underpinnings of what we do. And to better understand your role in any aspect of being more chivalrous, including generosity, you got to think about, you know, well, what is it about other people that I've appreciated that they've done? You know,
without measuring yourself against them, because you know, some people have an amazingly endless well that they can draw from, and it doesn't devalue what you might have as a resource to contribute if you feel like it's less. But yeah, don't measure yourself against those people that inspire you.
Absolutely. I think that I think it's a guideline. It's not a something that needs to be replicated or copied. And I feel like the places where I've lived in the SCA and some of the places that I've visited have been kind of, I guess, overflowing with generosity in many cases, but being a little bit more well-traveled than I am, would you say that hospitality and generosity are kind of ubiquitous throughout the society? Is it something that you could expect no matter where you go?
Yeah, but I also tend to have a very low expectancy. Like I never expect anything. And so when anything shows up, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. So, it's sort of tempered with a very small level of expectation. Now that doesn't mean that I don't want to say it like I don't expect nothing. Like I expect people to treat me like a human being and to respect me if I ask for help. Like there's a baseline. I'm not saying I go in thinking nothing, but by not thinking anything, it also means I'm not thinking anything negative.
Sure.
So I'm not going in with negative expectations, but I'm not going with unreal positive expectations either. It's a true neutral situation. And by not feeding the negative side immediately, I'll feed the positive side when somebody offers a seat or a cup of water or gives me directions or takes a minute to talk to me. Like every single thing that can tick the positive side of that scale and put good juju in, it immediately skews my perspective. And it doesn't, I've just made a very conscious decision not to feed the negative side or to go in with negative expectations. Like, oh, I've heard that the East Coast is so abrupt. And no, like, yes, they can be more forceful than the Midwestern, like, oh, we don't talk about that. Like, you just have to kind of know the people that you're dealing with. We are in a medieval game, and the SCA people tend to be more balanced than like an extreme stereotype.
Sure.
So go down to like downtown New York kind of thing. You're not going to Penzic to like be like East Coast. It's just where it is. And the game kind of evens everybody out. But definitely I find that people do want to do good and they do want to offer hospitality and to be generous, and everybody wants a little validation. So I think in general, people will try to be good and helpful.
Yeah. I find sometimes it's very common in a lot of your gate volunteers and your security staff. I feel like that's where I meet people that are kind of in a mode of being generous. Those are always the people that are willing to like I said, to give the directions or to walk you to the camp that you can't find. My first visit to Penzic was the last one that they held, and there was a couple of times when I first got there where I didn't know where I was going. It's so big, and
It is.
I didn't think twice about asking anybody, and nobody hesitated to help me. Nobody looked at me like I was funny or because they didn't know me. They just immediately said, "Oh, well, no, you got to go this way," and just sent me on my way. And that was refreshing. I had always kind of heard the crazy sort of reputation that Penzic gets for being as big and as inclusive as it is in terms of not having SCA folk there. And that can be a little scary for an Outlander. So going to that and really just experiencing what I've come to know as like pretty standard SCA hospitality and generosity was a refreshing sight. So much so that I feel like what might have been my one and only experience with Penzic is probably not going to be. I'm sure I will return once we start doing that sort of thing.
I know that's going to be an interesting transition. And I think that I'm really glad you're doing these talks so that we can have those healthy mindsets on virtues and what we might want out of our experiences in new places as we become accustomed and open to travel again.
Yeah. And I think specifically speaking on this virtue is important at this time because there's a desensitization of what we do in the SCA that's created by this barrier that we now have to interact through. Anybody can argue with me in the comments if they want, but the bottom line is that we have to learn how to communicate again, because message boards are not always clear. Tone is hard to infer in the written word, and we're not all going to sit on Zoom chats all the time so that we can have this kind of interaction, so we can see facial expressions and understand what people are doing through body language. But the more that we are going to have to do online, given that this may be something that we have to do for a while, the more I think that having a generous attitude is kind of important. And not, I think that's where generosity of spirit comes into play. Not assuming someone else's intent, asking clarifying questions when you don't understand what somebody's trying to say, not jumping to conclusions, giving them the benefit of the doubt. I think things like that can all be considered generosity. Just as much as giving material objects to somebody who needs something, or perhaps giving your time to someone who needs your time. Being able to say, hey, I'm not going to assume this guy was trying to be an asshole. I'm just going to I'm going to ask him a few questions and kind of get to the crux of his point before I start passing judgment.
Absolutely. Patience is going to be more important than ever before in reintegrating ourselves with each other, and I think that the flip side of all this is to be genuine and gracious and grateful. Tis the season for being thankful. It's, if you're going to be generous, you need to also be thankful and grateful for what you also get from people. There's a whole lot of there's so much with this lockdown about I don't know an artisan that didn't put their stuff out there.
Yeah.
Whether it's painting or a calligraphy or the metalworking and the performing arts, everybody went free. Vulgar Mute has been on, and they're playing live shows all the time. All of the bards have been doing bard nights. All of the musicians have been doing videos and sessions and stuff so it's oh yeah, thank God they're putting it up there, but take a second and think about it and express that personally to those artisans. They're waiting. They're okay, yeah. Well, they don't know how not to create, and they've been generous enough to share it. But when, like you said, you don't get the body language back. They can't stand in front of a crowd and hear your ovation. They need to see that 50 cents in the tip jar on PayPal. That's a link at the bottom so that they can pay the bills, kind of thing. They don't get to pass the hat anymore.
Yeah. And I think that crosses into some stuff that I really wanted to get into, because you're living that life.
Oh, yeah.
And you're not the only one. I mean, we both know and have mutual friends that they're trying to make their passion their livelihood. And this has hit them in a way that I couldn't understand, having a job like I do, which is very much a salaried position and benefits and this, that, and the other. So I have been taking some coursework from my roommate, Earl Mortigan, and he's been teaching me how to smith. And I value that time that he gives me. And I've come to better, I think I already had a pretty good grasp of what it means to be an artisan, especially having as many friends as I do that do create and then try to, have that finance them. But it's really become very apparent to me in this current circumstance that, you can't just take, especially like you said, performing artists. Vogelmut's a great example. I caught them not long ago on a total happenstance. I'm sure one of my friends was live streaming it, and I was, flipping through Facebook, and oh, there they are. So, and I've had some great memories where they were the soundtrack. So, yeah, I'll watch, and then it pops up, and I mean, and then all of a sudden, I'm thinking to myself, you know what? Let me just throw a little cash their way. I ain't got a lot, but if everybody gives a little, these guys will be on in a week, and we'll be able to watch them again. I mean, there's all kinds of. It can be self perpetuating, but you have to remember that they're using their time, then their abilities to pay their bills, whereas I'm just doing it as a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to respect that when people are really trying to make a go of it with what they're passionate about. The thing that encourages them the most is when they finish a performance or they finish a project and it actually does what it was intended to do. It pays the bills. And
Yeah.
I got a CD out of the whole the whole internet. I wasn't even expecting that. I didn't realize. I guess I didn't read the fine print that you got a CD if you made a donation. But I guess I met the minimum, and then I got an email saying, "Oh, can we have your mailing address? We want to send you a thank you." And I'm like, "Okay." And a couple like a week later, I get a CD, and it's like, I mean,
That's magical.
right? And that was super generous too, because they could have charged me separate or tried to sell it to me, but they weren't trying to necessarily do that. They were trying to get their music out there and be, I think, a source of inspiration for us during this time. And honestly, I applaud that sort of generosity, even though it is involved in a transaction in a weird way. And I think people will assume that if money's involved, if there's an exchange of goods, that somehow is not, if doesn't fall into generosity. But I think that
People do make it not genuine. Like it's not like, oh, they're just being nice because they're paid for it. It's like,
yeah,
no, they're doing this because they can't not. Like they breathe this stuff. They live music, and they want to share, but they also want to live. And that's kind of a muddy line with us in the SCA. You've mentioned artisans multiple times as being generous, and it gets complicated.
well, yeah, I as being a landed noble currently, and I had these kind of ideas going in with my Baroness Imanya. We had conversations about how we don't want to take advantage of any of our artisans.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to understand that some of them are absolutely hobbyists, and them making something to give away as a gift of generosity is purely that they're doing it because uh, they've got some time, you've given them some material, and they've created, which is awesome. And if people can do that, that's great. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of our artisans are trying to pay rent, and they should be given compensation when they create on your behalf, whatever that can manifest itself as. And I think it can be extremely tacky for somebody in my position to expect that artisans always give and never receive. And that, at the bare minimum, you owe them a thank you.
Oh God. And I can't tell you how many times I've done something they're like, thanks, bye. Like grab and go. And it's just like, oh, okay. Sure, glad I could help. Moving on.
For sure. And it's reasonable to understand that can grate on an individual after a while. And
Mm-hmm.
people almost never see the lead up, they only see the reaction at the end. And when an artisan is overtaxed by whoever, uh, and maybe they haven't done a great job of setting limits themselves, but at the same time, you know, there is a contingency of being able to understand that you can't just go to the well and go to the well and go to the well and never reinvigorate that situation. You've got to be thankful. You've got to show gratitude, and if at all possible, you got to help them pay for those materials, or in some cases, you got to pay for the artisanry and the craftsmanship that you are expecting out of these people. And
Yeah, you can very easily get away with, hey man, I got this stuff. Can you help me do this? No, there's not a time limit. Like yeah, I got Tuesday nights free. It'll take the better part of this year to put your armor together, but I'm happy to donate my time over the course of a year. But if you're like, oh man, there's a tournament, I want to fight in Crown this time, and it's in like maybe a month, right? Like, and then you're like, yeah, I think I can help you get it together if you come over and help me, and then they're there helping, and then all of a sudden your time isn't valuable because they're also investing the time. So, and yeah, it just, if you give somebody time can also be a very valuable way of paying someone back.
Sure. And I think going into a situation where you're seeking the assistance of an artisan or a performer or what have you, going into that situation prepared to be generous with whatever resources you have can help make that situation the best situation possible.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes for me, it's, I can't do the thing that you can do, but I can certainly buy all the stuff you need to do it. And say, here, making a beautiful tunic like the one I'm wearing now. Beautiful artisan made this for me, and she did it out of the generosity of her heart, and that's wonderful. But I know so many clothiers that if I wanted something specific and I didn't feel like I could get it done, if I bought the fabric, bought the materials necessary, and got it to them, that alone would be enough to motivate them to help me. And then if I went further and said, hey, you know what, I'm going to pay you for your labor too, because you're putting in time to get this done on a short time scale, maybe. Like
Most homesters and stuff, like a tunic takes like 10 hours for most people, if not more, especially if it's got anything fancy to it. So,
yeah,
you're doing a 40-hour work week.
exactly. And then that's the thing is understanding that time scales are everything to us, because most of us aren't doing this professionally in any capacity. There's
it really get muddy though, like with the people. It's like part of the magic of the SCA is it's big enough that it can support artisans to do this full time.
Yes.
That's bizarre. It's a hobby. Like, there's enough of us that do it regularly that it supports its own economy.
Yeah.
But the head off this, it can't eat anymore. Yeah. So
I think it's just important that when we're having this generosity conversation to bring to the forefront that that's something you should be thinking about when you're dealing with your buddy who's a blacksmith, or your friend that makes clothes, or your person that the person that that's a potter or whatever. There was once a culture in the SCA where those folks were maybe adapting what they were already doing to be merchants in the SCA. They maybe they followed the Ren Fair circuit, or maybe they went to fairs and stuff, and they I'll get a permit and we'll sell at this SCA event. And there was probably a time where that was like the majority of merchants. But like you just alluded to, this hobby has created its own demand and economy to meet that demand. And there's enough people providing legitimate, researched, well-made stuff, whether it be clothes, accessories, armor, what have you, that it demands that you consider it an integral part of what we're doing. It's not just this thing, well, I can take it or leave it, it's woven into what we do. Events that have merchants at them do better, especially if those merchants are offering high quality, researched, and well put together items. And go ahead.
I said absolutely.
Yeah.
The high valued and well made is definitely caught people's attention. So I think there's more of a movement to support those guys. But I want everybody, you be careful. Don't become elitist.
Sure. Yeah.
Value in good materials, but there is also balance in in, trying to, not everybody needs to be wearing Seville Road suits.
Yeah. And I think the merchant community has done a pretty decent job of understanding that there's a variety of price points that they need to be able to accommodate, because you've got the brand new player that doesn't want to go to Merchants Row and not come back with something because everything was way too expensive for them.
Yeah, Boots by Bohemian does a great job with that. So Boots by Bohemian, Feed the Ravens, those guys both do a really great job of having, like, I got this for the simple person, and then if you're on the other end, they're like, yeah, this is handmade, absolutely, this is made from a meteorite, from the earth. This is the real deal. So, those guys do a really good job. I'm trying to think just off the top of my head, people I talk to regularly that have kind of keyed that into their merchanting structure. But crossing all of those, Raymond does that too. Raymond's Quiet Press has stuff. He does a good job reaching out to everybody. And those are all just guys trying to make it. They love the game and they love the SCA, but they're also really savvy business.
Yeah, and I think that there's an interesting interplay there, because I think that all those folks that you just mentioned, I would absolutely agree with you on. But I think a commonality with all of them is that they still hold what we're doing as members of the society in high enough regard to not try to, I guess, swindle people or offer something that's unreasonable. They want to be, not only do they want to make money, they also want to be contributing members to the group. And the balance that has to be struck, I think, because I think it's very easy to pick out the merchant that's simply there to merchant. They have no interest in doing anything. And those people have their place, and those people are, as long as they don't cause a disruption, I don't have a problem with them being there. But
like Todd Cutler does amazing work. He does everything from like historical reproductions to like, what is it, the Witcher Blade and stuff like that.
Right.
Todd does his thing and he sells, and he's not showing up on weekends and like trying to take over the corner and corner the market.
So I think
are supportive of us without participating. So
right. And that balance is important, and understanding that artisans and craftspeople within the society certainly have a choice in the matter. They could be stingy if they wanted to be. They could choose to not contribute back to the group. Is important, because I think that if you keep that in mind, your interactions with them will be more productive. Understanding that that they really are still here to kind of help out and make the group better. When you talk to Ray, for example, the whole reason that the jewelry business got kicked off was because they didn't have enough laurel medallions. That's absolutely the reason. Raymond's Quiet Press was a printing press. That's what it was. It was there. It was there to record and to print things like newsletters and manuals and stuff like that. And he still has some of that stuff available. But the jewelry end of everything, the reproduction jewelry end of stuff, was because we didn't have the things necessary to play. I believe it was him that had to give away his medallion, because there was one in the entire kingdom, and they had to make the next guy or lady. So they needed to take it. So it's he certainly filled a need. In that,
I think that's the important thing that you just brought up, is it's generosity filling a need. It's not generosity filling your desires. You're not doing this because this is what you can absolutely do what you want to do because you love it and contribute that. But don't think like, well, I'm being generous. It's like, okay, but you're doing it because you want, like, I think generosity has some level of what's a good word?
Selflessness.
Yeah, it's selflessness, but it's filling the need. You know, it's in response to something.
A little bit of stewardship, perhaps.
Yeah, like giving away a medallion. So not like somebody was like, "Oh, I like your medallion," and you're like, "Here, please have my medallion." The kingdom needed a medallion,
Right.
and he was generous with his.
Right. And I think that goes back to understanding the role of the virtues as a peer. Our job as peers involves stewardship of the society, and that might be a new concept for people listening to this. I don't know. I don't think it's talked about nearly enough. And
Yeah.
again, some of the reasons why I'm doing this are about kind of getting that message out there that once you level up to this, you should be giving more than you're taking, because that's the only way that you can help club move forward. If all you are doing is taking and you're not giving back in some form or fashion, whatever that takes, whatever form that manifests, then eventually problems arise. And I think there have probably been situations we've all experienced where that has manifested itself in a way that was negative, or had an impact that was lasting, that wasn't good. But yeah, Ray decided to start doing jewelry, reproduction jewelry. He started with those medallions, he quickly expanded to other things. And yes, it was an opportunity for him to make some extra cash on the side, because that wasn't his primary means of employment. But it was also a way he could contribute. And then he starts going to big wars like Penzik and other things, and spreading the availability of his product out there. And all of a sudden, you've got a relatively low cost option to make your kit the best it can be. Now, it's like anything else. The sky's the limit on jewelry. You can get super expensive if you want to, but a lot of his base stuff is super affordable, and it's priced that way on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, I always encourage people. I mean, being a Laurel and coming from a creative background, I always encourage people to think, because it's the Society of Creative Anachronism, be creative, but also kind of hone in on your persona and your person. Like, would your person have had 16 tunics or cotardies or dresses? Like, probably not. So why don't you just cut back a little bit and invest in your clothing and invest in your accessories and invest in your kit a little bit more, instead of having multiples. We're so used to having like one in every color.
Yeah.
That really you would have just had, I got the red dress or I got the blue dress. Like,
right.
Which one am I wearing? And when I redid my go ahead.
No, keep going.
Oh, I was gonna say, when I had started out fighting when I joined the FCA, and then I kind of went away and I came back, and then I was having trouble getting my fighting kit together and working for me. So I kind of stepped away and I really focused on art a bit, because that's what I do professionally in the real world too. So it's like, oh man, just do art all the time. It'll be great. Well, it was, and it was fun. But then I realized I wasn't being fair to myself by letting myself have enjoyment in this thing. That the original reason I loved the SCA was because of fighting. And it's just what really hooked me in the beginning. So I said, I need to step back, I need to take some time and go back to fighting. And when I reinvented my kit a little bit, I've always been a Lance Connect, but when I went back and did primarily boy clothes, that's it. I got my trousers and I got my boots and I got my kit. It's my campaign kit, and it fits the backpack. And I really got into the historical side of it. And, there's all kinds of treatises and documents about, like, a good soldier will have his 2 clean linen shirts and his 1 pair of trousers, and like it's really crazy what you can find and get into. So I kind of went that way, but then that really realized I was like, I need to invest in the good hardware or the better fabrics from the local merchants. So I really have since then spent a lot of time, finding people who know what they're talking about on that, and trying to learn more about who to go to and where to find it.
Yeah. And I think that relates a lot to what we're talking about in terms of understanding that that you can spread that mentality a little bit. You can be generous with that thought process. Meeting you and understanding your thought process on some of this, along with meeting with others that have a similar thought process, inspired me to do exactly what you're talking about, which is I don't need a new outfit for every event I go to. I don't need to generate 20 tea tunics that are in various states of being complete. There's value in focus. There's value in understanding and doing some of that research and finding out, yeah, what would my persona have actually had on their person? I think there's a lot of what we do in the SCA has to do with convenience and comfort. And I think if you kind of shift your mindset as you play, you can find that most of your creature comforts can be satisfied because people haven't changed all that much since that point in time. They have ways of dealing with a lot of stuff. Now, there's obvious exceptions to that. Some people have to have their CPAP machine, or some people have to have, this, that, or the other. And those are all legitimate. But, part of what we're doing is getting back to something that's a little simpler and a little bit less constraining on our modern sensibilities.
I think all of that again ties back with the virtues by putting a medieval mindset of how you present yourself, what you're wearing, what you're using, and what your needs are. If you simplify everything, your thought process immediately tries to simplify your intrinsic needs as well. And when we have our set virtues that we need to explore, it's a little bit easier to find the path that you're on or want to follow as well. Simplifying everything.
Yeah. And I've given a lot of thought over the last couple of years, particularly now that I'm a seated noble and trying to help influence the program locally. I've given a lot of thought to what does a program look like that is, number one, more inclusive, number two, encourages more generosity, and number three, really gets at the heart of what this was all meant to be in the first place. You and I have both been to a lot of foreign wars and domestic ones. Each one of our kingdoms hosts a decent size gathering that draws people from outside the kingdom, and there's a time to be creative in our anachronism and have essentially a modern party in medieval clothes. But
yeah,
I think what I would like to see us do more, particularly here in Alberon, is kind of bring a program to the forefront that celebrates our common interests and gives people an opportunity to try things in a low risk environment. I would like to see an event where we're all trying to do the medieval thing, and it's not just about a tournament or that tournament or this followed by this or that revel. Tournaments and revels should never go away. They're very important, right? It's a big part of what the SCA is on the whole. But I could spend an entire day sitting at a forge just talking about moving metal.
Yeah.
And I've watched you sit an entire afternoon sipping refreshing libations and enjoying some light fare while you discuss this or that or the other in Laurel's Hollow at Lily's. I mean, experiencing some of those places and seeing how some other kingdoms do it really inspires me to really get back to some of that type of programming where it's, let's have a goal as
Yeah.
let's try to make our surroundings as medieval as possible.
Sorry.
Oh, please go.
Oh no, I think. All right. Well, we have a road to Southwark was an event started by Damien. Have you heard of that one here?
I have.
Yeah. So that one is it originally was invite only. It's a come and go event. I think that's the other thing is that events, once they've been done, they have to be outdone the next year, and then they're permanent. So that's a different albatross around our necks right now. But anyways, the Road to Southwark was an invite only, and you show up in your medieval gear, and we're going to hike and go on pilgrimage, and it's completely medieval. And then the second year they did it, they tied it in with a medieval cooking day. So the town, quote town, where everybody was going to had a hearth, and there were the bakers, and there were people working on different dyeing and fiber crafts and food crafts, and everything that was in a town was set up at the central location for the day. But they really, really said, okay, it's an SCA event, but we want you guys to try your absolute best to be medieval and to wear only period garb. And you're parking your car a little bit farther away to get the experience of walking into town. It really changed the entire feel and aesthetic of the event. And it was a beautiful memory to make with those good friends, for sure.
And I think for the purposes of enhancing that medieval moment, we've got to start to increase the frequency in which we see that kind of thing appear in our calendars. I think that at least that's a goal that I have, is to try. I don't want to get rid of or totally eliminate how we have done things in the past. In fact, that's not really reasonably possible where I'm from. But there is a possibility of saying, hey, let's create a community where learning how to do new stuff and maybe not doing it great the first 5 or 6 times is okay. Right.
Yeah.
And we're just going to have a good time, like you said, being medieval and really creating that medieval moment. And all of that requires a couple of key things. Everybody's got to be patient with one another. So you've got to be able to, again, have that generosity of spirit. I'm going to engage with everybody that comes by my station. Let's say I'm running the hearth, and whether they're there for 20 minutes or they're there for 3 hours, we're going to find something for them to do, and they're going to feel like they're a part of what we're doing. Right.
Absolutely.
And it also requires that generosity of time, because people have to think out what they want to do in order to be able to accommodate whoever's going to show, and then actually produce once the event happens. And it also, in some cases, is going to require a material generosity, because you're going to have people show up that don't have what they need to do what you
Yeah.
And I think that again, bringing it all back to being generous and hospitable, if your mindset is to just get people to try stuff and it's not necessarily anything else, whatever that may be, then I think it's a lot easier to get excited about that. Because if your end goal is that newbie A or old timer B just got a new skill, then bam, you're happy. I mean, that's it's I think it's shifting some of the mindset of I'm here to have fun for myself to I'm here to have fun with the community.
Yeah. Yeah, community is definitely important. Being generous with your words as well. Like, you said getting people to try new things, it's like, oh man, everything else you do is great. And you're like, man, I've been working so hard at learning this new skill. It's like, oh, it's not gonna be perfect. Why can't you just say, yeah, man, good try? Like it's a good start. Like it looks good.
Right. And if you can just remember to do that, the next version of it's going to be that much better.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many times the first one was just throw it away. And I've learned a good rule of thumb. And I don't know if it was you that suggested this to me, or maybe it's just a couple. I imagine a couple artisans that I know have suggested this to me, but I've just learned to buy enough material to make two. Because
Yeah.
the first one's about figuring it out, and the second one's about taking all the stuff you learned from the first one and applying it.
Well, is if you absolutely rock it and hit the first one square on, you got enough to make another one to give to somebody else. Or maybe you make it and it turns out too small and you're like, hey, you're half my size, I'm gonna give this to you.
I've totally been the beneficiary of particularly garb that was made a little too big for somebody. No joke. And I think in fact, this has happened twice to me. Same guy. Sir Lavin the Long Walker. And I believe you know Sir Lavin. You've met him at least a couple times. Battlemore, if nothing else. But Sir Lavin lives here locally, and I consider him a good friend. And we were at Battlemore 4, I believe. And I'm standing in his camp. I'm talking to other people. I'm not actually talking to him. And then all of a sudden, from behind me, I feel like this push, like somebody's got their hands on my shoulders. But it's not like somebody's like grab me on the shoulders, like sometimes people will do in the SCA, give you a massage or just to get your attention. It was kind of and I was like, what's going on? And all of a sudden I hear Sir Lavin go, yep, that looks like that'll fit. I'm like, what? And I turn around and he's got this huge wool tunic that was lined. It's this beautiful kind of green gray wool trimmed, beautifully done and hand embroidered. Actually by Sir Raymond's wife, Mrs. Ginevra. And he's telling me all this. He's like, she made this tunic for me and there's no way it's going to fit me. And he was right. It's big on me. To this day, it's big on me. I mean, it looks fine on me because, it's kind of loose. It's got that kind of, definitely that medieval look of being kind of baggy, particularly for my time period. And it's floor length, so it works nicely. But it'd have been a tent on him because he's a beanpole. And, and, that is something that's very much done in the SCA. And you should always consider, if you're not going to use it, but it's still in good shape, pass it on. Don't let it collect dust in your house. Somebody else could use it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Giving without expectation.
Yeah, clearly. And Sir Lavin has that in spades. He's one of many that I know that have always been willing and able to pass on whatever it is they have that they're not using or they don't want anymore. And I find fighting culture to be particularly strong in that regard because we've all experienced loaner armor.
Oh my gosh.
And then the generosity of somebody, whether it be a knight or just another player or a master, saying, hey, I got these elbow cops, or I got this extra set of greaves, or I've got this old helm that's kind of beat up, but it's still good. You want it? Mm-hmm. And you make it your own, and you maybe you slap a coat of paint on it, or you have to grind the rust off or whatever, but it's more than you had the day before.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the kind of thing where it starts, you are led by example, and then because someone led you by example, that is how you have now learned to be a leader. So hopefully that's what I hope perpetuates. I've always thought about, since coming up here, I've had to think about it. So I haven't always thought about it, but since being since having that mirror held up and having to do a lot of self-reflection and growth, I've had some very poignant conversations with people about like, hey, Kat, you changed my life, like on all levels. And we've had to sit down and cry it out. And it's just like, holy cannoli. Like, I did what? And like, I didn't even think about it at the time. And it was just like, that's what you do. You know, you needed help and I helped you, or you needed an ear to listen, or whatever small act of just kindness that I would have, there's something that I would want someone to do, you know, do unto others type thing. And as you go on your path of chivalry within the SCA, you need to take time to reflect upon that and say, hey, have I been that person that somebody's going to have a memory of? Or are they going to talk to me later and be like, oh, you know, that maybe the right way to inspire everybody to go help take down the tent, but it got the job done? Or do you like, come on guys, like we need to do this together? And then somebody's like, hey, you remember that time that we all helped you do this thing? Like, you have to know how you're talking to people and really be respectful to yourself so you can be respectful of others.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not feeling very grandiloquent this evening, but
You're doing
what came to my mind
for
that
sure.
you have to lead by example. And it really does. It, you know, like you said, he comes up and gives you a tunic, and I've seen you do the same thing, you know? Like you've had those examples and you give of yourself to others as well. You're a singer, you know how it feels to share.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring up my kind of pastime of singing. It's never been about necessarily what it gives me. It does give me stuff. I'm not going to deny it. I feel good when I sing and other people enjoy it, but um, it's about lifting spirits, and that comes from my background in the Boy Scouts. I mean, that's why we sing in the Boy Scouts, is when you're doing a work crew or you're hiking up a hard trail. It's a way to kind of lift your spirit so that it's not so bad. And you know, in the SCA, it can be the same sort of thing. You know, maybe whatever we've done has kind of hit a dull moment, or everybody's kind of, you know, dragging a little bit around camp, and a song can put a happy note in somebody's heart, and um, it's almost the most inexpensive thing you could possibly give to
Absolutely.
to help another person's maybe mindset change or their attitude change. And I've been very blessed that to have learned a lot from people that are performers in our group, and we have such a generous culture of sharing songs and stories. I think that's a very appealing part of getting involved in bardic presentation. Is there's not a lot of people out there, even the ones that make money doing it, you know, that actually have like CDs and stuff that they sell in the mundane world. Um, they don't get super possessive with their work in terms of people moving it around. You know, sort of. Heather of Dale comes to mind. You know, she makes money doing what she does, but I hear her songs whether she's at the event or not, because she's had that impact on people, and she writes music that is inspiring, and that's a legacy in and of itself. And the fact that, you know, people can are free to share that, and she's not going to get insulted is it's kind of cool. Not all not all artisans are so generous with their art.
Yeah, I think that it does come down to hurt feelings and you know, being disrespected over time. People can become jaded and sour and very calloused towards, they're like, I've been generous enough, like I get taken advantage of in every other situation, this one is mine. So I mean, not just people are inherently just a little bit selfish, but you know, it's okay.
Yeah.
You have to know yourself. Like,
How do we combat that? Like, how, if you're feeling that fatigue of being maybe you're the well that's been gone to too many times, like how do you maybe keep yourself from slipping in that, or what are some ideas that we can explore kind of help artisans not feel like they're being too overtasked with sharing themselves in that way.
Yeah. Communication. You know, nobody likes those difficult conversations. And take some responsibility for yourself. Don't lash out. Like, you can't just be like, you know what? No. Like, say, no, you know, I've had enough. And if they get disrespectful, be, excuse me, I've said no. You're being disrespectful. Like, you don't just scream at a toddler that's throwing a temper tantrum. You know, there's only so far you can get when you're screaming into the wind. It's you're not you're not going to win. Like, it's just destructive, and it's not helping anybody. But take a deep breath, give yourself the time to compose your thoughts before you just tell somebody to F off. You know, that there's no perfect answer, but having some grace and decorum in the way that you present yourself is absolutely within your realm of control. When you say, no, I don't have time for this. No, I don't have the resources for this. Or maybe I can do so much, but please respect when I have done this, that is it.
Yeah.
So communication is the only way that that's going to ever be solved.
And I would say that it's contingent on the person making the request to respect it when I think we mentioned that before, but you got to respect when somebody's giving you a clear, concise, but polite no. Like, hey.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have to, it's so crazy how this dovetails with humility. You have to be humble enough to understand that the no is not a personal attack. It's got nothing to do with you. It's this person has assessed what they're capable of, and they can't do any more than what they've said they can. If the answer is no, you have to respect that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's that whole measuring against other people. But you helped so and so, or you did this for da da da. That was a different time and place in person. Like, and honestly, it doesn't matter if they like them and not you. They told you no. Like,
exactly.
You know, it just like respect it. That's all there is to it. It's communication from everybody.
Yeah. I think that's well said. And I think getting at the crux of what I kind of wanted, I think generosity and hospitality are things that we've all experienced in the SCA. And I hope that people don't experience kind of the lack of that, but it does happen. And I think that sometimes when people are told no on certain things, they let that kind of stuff creep into their mindset instead of just taking it for what it is. And I think it's important to kind of sort of attack that paradigm and shift it, because an artisan, a craftsperson, their time and their talent is important. And if they are being true to themselves and understanding their limitations, then you've got to be cognizant of that and respect it when it's being communicated. So yeah, I would agree 100%. Communication would seem to be the absolute key to making sure that people don't get their feelings hurt, people don't misunderstand. But I think it is important to point out that it's not just communication on the part of the person being asked. The person doing the asking has to manage their own expectations and their own pride a little bit, I think, and not let those things creep in when there is an earnest attempt to communicate clearly.
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
It is good stuff.
So real quick, what are your feelings on avarice as being maybe the antithesis of generosity?
Ooh. I think that no matter who says what, it's something that humans struggle with. I think that we're all a bunch of magpies and have those like, oh, it's so shiny. Like everybody's got their shiny that they want to chase, you know.
We covet things.
We do. People are covetous, you know, just as there's their virtues, there's the sins. And we need to honor and recognize those as being the other side of the coin and keep them in check.
Sure.
So, you know, nobody's perfect. Don't be, again, humility, apologize.
Yeah.
If you know done wrong, just apologize and be genuine about it. Just, sorry, but no, there's no but. I am sorry that this was a bad choice on my part and I have made you feel this way. Like, I apologize for contributing negatively to a situation. Own it and then move on and stop beating dead horses. Just get over it.
If I'm being honest, I've been guilty of that. And some of that's my own pride trying to seek out the response I'm looking for. Cause sometimes people don't give you the response you're looking for. So you don't feel like you've apologized enough or you haven't made amends yet. But sometimes it's important to reflect for a second and say, well, this person did just say that you're forgiven or it's okay. You got to let it go. Like you said, if you hold on to it and you bring it up again, you're just going to sour the relationship all over again. And by bringing it up and making it this constant point of contention, at some point it is to no one's benefit that this is even a memory. So why are we going over it again?
I mean, that's avarice in and of itself to covet those feelings, you know. That's, I think technically avarice is of wealth and goods, I think is the Webster dictionary version of that, where it's very much a tangible covetous thing. But if you want to be more philosophical about it, that I think you can hoard those feelings. Like, I want the warm fuzzies of being forgiven, or I want the warm fuzzies of, you know, oh, it's okay. Like, I'm sorry too. Like, seeking compliments or seeking gratitude, or I don't know.
Like it's almost a sycophant's response.
Mm.
And the thing is that I've gotten into the habit of, because people will, and I think that that's just, you know, the way we communicate in the modern day. People will say, oh, well, it's okay. You know, that is a common response for certain things. But when I know that I've done wrong, I'll say, well, no, excuse me. It's not okay. What I did was not cool. It was not appropriate. I understand that you're accepting my apology, but let's not make what I've done that was wrong acceptable. Let's continue to keep it where it belongs. And I think that the pleasantries of some of our modern communication can sometimes be a really a safe haven for us. We can try to hide in that a little bit instead of seeing what really is going on.
I think lackadaisical approach or flippancy sometimes with that kind of thing can come across, even in hospitality, when there's this gray space where it's not just, well, everybody should know they're welcome, or I've given you the golden engraved invitation to this evening's dinner party. Like, there's that, hey, Roland, do you want to come over and work on projects tonight? You say, why, yes, Kat, that would be lovely. Are we going to have dinner? What may I bring? Like, let's have a conversation about this instead of making assumptions.
Yeah.
So, you know, same thing. When you said avarice, it's like, you can covet that kind of thing. Like, I think that's where like a lot of the negative or the bad blood comes from, is assuming on conversations like that and then coveting, like, I want what they have.
Yeah.
I haven't asked for it and it's not been offered. So now,
it's problematic. And I think there are certain folks that play into that more than others. there's certainly people that can be a little full of themselves, and that's in real life or SCA. But um, I think going back to humility, surprise, um, if you can humble yourself a little bit and remember that at the end of the day, you are just who you are. You're not really this thing. And the stuff that you involve yourself in it's a hobby. We're just having a good time. Why do we have to be exclusive at all? You know,
Yeah.
I think
Well, I
that
think it is who you are, but I, that's maybe something else that people can think about is not just how can we achieve these things and take time to think about gratitude and being gracious and grateful and how do you talk to people, but the and the why again, the why. Oh, I just forgot where I was going.
I did that last week.
I know. It's all the same. So really it is. It's all the same. You know, give yourself the time to think about it.
Yeah. The reflection piece is crucial. And I think that conversations like these are where that can be manifested and played with. That's really what these are. I think ultimately is this is you and me playing with an idea, fully exploring it, you know, and then everybody else gets to watch, you know, and hopefully they gain something from it. I think I think there's something to be said in the doing. Uh, you can think about these things and you should think about these things, but until you challenge your preconceived notions by throwing them out there for somebody else to consider, what have you really done? I mean, you've only done the first step. I think is where what I'm getting at is it's not just enough to say, well, I've thought about my behavior and I've thought about what I think is right. Um, I think you got to go a little further and remember that all of this has social applications, and the only way that you're going to be able to understand if they're your thinking is appropriate or dare I say correct in your assumptions is if you do have a conversation with somebody else and see what they say. Gauge
it. What do you want for dinner? I don't know. Okay. Food? No, like absolutely. You said no. Give me 3 options and I'll pick from those 3. Like contribute.
Yeah. Sure.
It's okay to say no and be like, no, I don't know what I want. What else could you suggest? It just doesn't like Chinese food doesn't sound good, which is a lie. Chinese food always sounds good. But you could just say like, I don't feel like Chinese food tonight. What else sounds good? Like at some point you can't just say no. Like you have to say, hold on, let me think for a second. You know what? Let's just make sandwiches. You know,
Right.
be okay to take a step back and just and simplify it a little bit, but contribute.
Yeah.
And that's a two-way street of communication.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. All good stuff. I think that ultimately um I think that ultimately we got to be careful in the society because there's a lot of opportunities for us to pursue things with maybe a little tinge of avarice or greed.
Absolutely.
Like you said, it is natural to want for yourself, and I would expand that to say there's nothing wrong with wanting for yourself. You can't do anything useful for others until you've taken care of your own needs, certainly. But I think that the community is where things have to ultimately reside when you're talking about a social group. The community has to be in everybody's heart and everybody's thoughts. And everybody's going to contribute to that to a greater or lesser degree. But if everybody's contributing, then it doesn't matter if one person's contributions are a little more than the others. Everybody's giving to it. I think that's more important. I think getting everybody involved is more important than quibbling over how or to what degree is the person involved. If I can get one person to work a gate shift and that's all they do for the event, That's all they need to do for the event.
Mm-hmm.
And they get a thank you from me, just like everybody else. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, we can't all be event stewards and participants.
Mm-mm.
There's too much going on. Sometimes, and that's why we rotate those things out. That's why we don't just have an event steward that runs everything. It's not like a carnival cruise, right? We're all volunteers. So the important things I think that we need to hold in our heart is that the community is the life's breath of what we're doing. Some places the community is a kingdom wide phenomenon where the focus is the kingdom, much like I feel like the case is in Callantyre. Some places like in the Outlands, your local group tends to drive that a little more than the kingdom, but the kingdom's still pretty strong. And then there are some places where they're so spread out that it's very much the local group that gets all the attention, and the kingdom is less of involved in that, or the group, or they don't operate at that level as much as they do locally. I think all are valid because they all came out of their own circumstances, but I think they all have that common thread of we've established what community is important to us, and we're going to participate on that level, and be generous with our time, be generous in spirit, be generous with our materials, so that this thing functions, and it functions at a high degree of satisfaction for all of the people involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Very succinct.
It's what I learned from you guys.
It's good.
Well, you know, there's nothing like showing up to a pavilion on a lake. You sit down and have a cold beverage and some snacks.
Yeah, everybody's trying to feed and give you drinks.
Yeah.
Please have everything. You know, it is our way. We are a kingdom wide phenomenon playing, like you said, where it's just everybody's involved, and I'm very, very fortunate that I live here. I love it, and everybody's got their own special place, but Callantyre definitely is home.
Indeed. I feel like you're a good ambassador for your kingdom.
It's weird talking about it because like I got your text and you said, hey, let's talk, and I said, okay. You're like, we're talking about this, and I was like, I do these things, that's me. And then I thought about it, I was like, oh, I guess that is me. And I talked to some other friends and they're like, Kat, shut up.
Well, and it's very much a characteristic of the Callantyre in my mind, that there's not a lot of ego attached to it one way or the other. It's not something that you brag about. Oh, I'm generous.
Yeah,
no, it's just
strange. No, I mean, like, I give you stuff that you need or might want. Like, I'm like, you're hungry, right? Like, just stop talking, let's eat.
yeah, exactly. And I think that just remembering that everybody's got those people that have affected them when they join the society. Just try to perpetuate the way you've been treated. And it can be as small as a kind word or a song. It can be as grand as making something brand new that you put a lot of effort into. It can manifest itself in any way that you see fit. And there's no expectation. There really shouldn't be.
You know, the smallest thing that brings this, that you just reminded me, the smallest thing that I never think about is smiling.
Okay, sure.
I have never come off of a field of, like, my favorite thing to do at Big Wars is pickups. I'm like, who's the biggest, baddest dog in this? Like, I'm gonna go fight you. And every time I've come off that field, almost every single person I fight, it's like, you're just so happy, like, you're smiling and you say thank you for like what? I'm like, this is so much. Like, you've given me so much just by accepting my invitation for a pass or a set of 3 passes. You know, I'm like, hey, that's my thing. I'm like, 3 passes, I'll learn, I'll move on. And that's the thing that they tell me every time is just, you smile. You're always smiling and laughing. And I'm just like, no, I'm so cranky all the time. Like, that's not me. It's like, no, that's it. I smile. And it's made a lot of difference for a lot of people.
I agree. There's something about all that is encompassed in what it takes to actually get out on the field, and whether it's melees or tournaments or pickups or whatever. Having a good attitude is like the tide that lifts all shifts. And, we talked about it.
Smiling is free.
Smiling is free. Yeah. What costs you nothing. But I think what's super important about it is that when you go in and you're truly just there to have a good time and learn, you free yourself from sort of the restraints of your own expectations in a lot of ways. And that can be super freeing. And I go into fighting situations more often than not with that mentality. Now, I won't lie and say that I never go into it with maybe a more serious, committed, focused mentality to not making a mistake or really focusing on a particular fighter because I've watched, their style or whatever. I mean, I certainly do that. But when I'm training, when I'm at a foreign war, and I'm just fighting new people I've never fought before, going into it with we're just going to fight and see where it goes. I mean, you learn that way. And if you can even go so far as to just be sure to give that fighter props when they best you. I think that's important. I try to make sure that if somebody catches me off guard or somebody impresses me with a shot that I wasn't expecting, I want to make sure that they know that they did that, because that's going to make their day.
Oh, yeah.
And certainly is true if, say, they're not a knight and I am,
Mm-hmm.
Just like it makes my day if, say, a count or a duke compliments me on my style or my execution. Those little bits combined with having a little bit of a smile on your face can make all the difference. And it just makes the fighting community at that place and at that time positive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that especially in these trying times, maintaining and nurturing that positive community is going to be what makes us grow and continues to keep us healthy as a club.
Yeah.
If they're like, they're all just crotchety, they aren't going to want to bring their friends. So we don't want to be stagnant, and we don't want to, by all means, we don't want to end, start declining. So
Yeah,
I think for a healthy future.
yeah, it's I think it's pretty vital. I agree with you there. So yeah, we've been here for a minute.
You and I can talk forever.
Huh?
We can talk forever.
It's true. It's not hard for us to have a conversation. That's never been our problem. I really want to thank you for your time today. This has been a great conversation about generosity and on all things SCA. I just wanted to end a little bit with, on maybe more of a personal note. How are you feeling about your path, your fighting path? How are things? Are you able to get in some practice, even though there's not much to be had in terms of social distancing and being a responsible adult?
Yeah, there is that. Well, I was feeling really good about it, and then, like you said, now we're here. I did really, really well for the first bit. I was like, because I was gearing up for a Crown tournament again. I've been fighting in Crown and doing fine, and was like, yes, we're gonna keep going, keep getting better and learning. And then I ended up doing Pell work every day for like the first few months, and I still do Pell work most days, but it just got to the point where I was just frustrated. You know, I didn't feel motivated anymore. And I went through that lull of, what am I even doing here? What does this even matter? And then, you know, it's just, you change the mentality. So I went from doing any kind of pel work to just slow the mental aspect of it, you know. And I would reach out to my people that I always talk to, because I have like Gwen and Logan and all those guys that are here that kind of are my little I joke that they're running the controller on the Xbox kind of things. They're always like yelling at me what to do and how to fix it and stuff like that. So, you know, you kind of reach out and say, hey, I think I've been doing this. They're like, yeah, but maybe try it that way. And then I just have been internalizing a lot of things. So we'll see what happens when I can get back to people. But been a lot of yoga, a lot of meditating, reading.
I think that's an aspect that's oftentimes maybe underemphasized, but internalizing what you're trying to accomplish is important. And having your crew of advisors, you know, people that you trust to give you a true evaluation of what you're doing and how to improve is important too. And I think that separates a very maybe average fighter from a more committed, more successful fighter. Is there are people that will get set in their ways and they reach a certain level of prowess and they're very comfortable there. And there are folks that don't. And the ones that don't tend to try to find all the problems or the rough spots and polish them. And I think that's you in spades. So, you know.
Yeah, I definitely had hit the next plateau of like, you know, I one of my favorite all time. I love fighting Hirsch here in Great Sword, especially. And, you know, I got him in Crown a couple crowns ago and just smoked him. And that still is just, he said, yes. And he, you know, his attitude in response to me getting him in Crown, that is, I'm like, I'm going to be you when I grow up. So, you know, I talked to him and doing all those. And I've, you know, made some good strides on getting better technically. But I think being able to see a fight and be able to talk about it is, a break may have actually been the best thing for me.
Sure.
To buy time and say, slow down, enjoy where you're at, take it in, and then do something with it instead of just being excited that you can do this thing now.
You know, that's fair, actually. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And what a guy. Hirsch is great. His Grace came out to witness Sir Germanicus become elevated. And that was really cool. And I actually got to cross swords with him for the first time at that event, and his sons, who are both very talented fighters. And that was a great day. And I can, when I saw that video of that Crown tournament that you're speaking about, and I saw his reaction, that was like, yes, that's exactly the reaction that we should all be having when somebody can put all of it together and best someone in single combat like that. That should be your reaction. That should be like where we're going is that it's not that I lost, it's that you bested me. You set out to do. And that moment represented kind of the apex of some growth, right?
Yeah.
And then,
well, it's fun to reflect on, because it's like there is clear communication. There is, you know, like you said, like, you bested me. Like, I know you've grown to the point that you did this. Like, but then acknowledgement the other way, where it's just like, I know that he wasn't pulling back. He's like, no, I straight up underestimated you, because you know, that's not where you were the last time we fought. And there you go. But we hugged it out. We both left the field with a smile on our face. And his Lady Magda was just like, she's like, I heard him. It was perfect. She goes, that's my girl. So, you know, it's all the way around. It's other people seeing and respecting him and his reaction that really made that a magic moment.
Yeah.
I felt like it was a good example for me and anybody else seeing.
Yeah, and I would agree. And I think that you're talking about a player who is in this for all the right reasons. He wants to see everybody grow and do all the things that they aspire to do. And when that attention to community becomes your mindset, then I think some of the other aspects become less important and less of a focus. And then generosity in all its forms can flow freely. And we all benefit from people doing that sort of thing.
Yeah. I think that sums it up for sure. Being grateful for the community that we've built, and generosity is inherent.
Bingo. All right, my sweet friend. It has been at least an hour. We'll see what it is after it's edited. But once again, I wanted to say thank you and know that I do miss you a whole bunch, and I'm glad you made this time for me today. But everybody out there listening, this has been Chivalry podcast. Our guest today was Mistress Katherine von Heilige, a very generous human being who is giving me a lot, and I hope that you get a lot from her and our conversation today. Still lots of stuff going on throughout the known world, a lot of people putting out a lot of good content, so be sure to check that stuff out. We've all kind of taken to the internet to scratch our SCA itch, and I'm hoping that that this has been of benefit to all those who are checking it out.
I will say one more thing on that. Just throw my information down in the link below too. And people, I love talking about this kind of thing. So if I maybe said something, you can always reach out to me, and then we'll put that down below as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. Absolutely. That sounds like a fantastic idea, actually. Okay. So once again, this has been Chivalry podcast. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another episode. But until then, be safe, take care, and if you need a place to stay, you can stay at my house.
Okay.
I left home when I was 15. Oh, mother, now pray for me. Me and old Tom took to the sea on the good ship Pelican's wing. Well, the days were long, but the nights were warm. Oh, mother, now pray for me. And we sailed away through the summer storms on the good ship Pelican's wing. Well, first we made for the shores of France. Oh, mother, now pray for me. With a load of silk and the girl who danced on the good ship Pelican's wing. Next we made for the English land. Oh, mother, now pray for me. We were there 3 days and we sailed again on the good ship Pelican's wing. She was a swift sail trader with a merry crew, liked every man and the captain too. And when the work was done, we'd all drink and sing on the good ship Pelican's wing. 6 days out of Bristol town. Oh, mother, now pray for me. When Davis by the sail, it was bearing down on the good ship Pelican's wing. The captain said, oh, lads, I fear. Oh, mother, now pray for me. We've come across a flag of a privateer on the good ship Pelican's wing. Well, we filled our mains and we made the run. Oh, mother, now pray for me. We were a peacetime trader and we had few guns on the good ship Pelican's wing. But though we flew over ocean wave, oh, mother, now pray for me. The other ship caught us in just one day on the good ship Pelican's wing. She was a swift sail trader with a merry crew, liked every man and the captain too. And when the work was done, we'd all drink and sing on the good ship Pelican's wing. Well, they came at us with dawn's first light. Oh, mother, now pray for me. And we read it ourselves and we made to fight for the good ship Pelican's wing. Old Tom died with steel in his hand. Oh, mother, now pray for me. And my other friends followed nigh to the man on the good ship Pelican's wing. They left me here upon this rock. Oh, mother, now pray for me, with a piece of bread wrapped in old sailcloth from the good ship Pelican's wing. But they left no water for the heat of day. Oh, mother, now pray for me. And I could hear them laughing as they sailed away on the good ship Pelican's wing.